In this example, we're going to talk a little bit about object properties. So I've got a stack here on my desktop called Show Field Properties. I'm going to double click it to start it up. And you'll notice it has some text in it right now. I'm going to go ahead and delete all that. So I'm going to highlight it all and just delete it. In this particular stack example, all it does is this button gets the properties of this particular field, this object here, and it just lists them for me. So if I click the button, you'll notice that text reappears. All of these things listed here are a property of this particular object, in this case this field. So from colors to scroll lines to highlighted lines to layers to name to patterns to the size to the scroll bar width. These are all properties of this particular object, in this case a field. Buttons have properties, cards have properties, graphics have properties. They all have different characteristics. If I want to bring up the properties of an object and look at them when I'm developing an application, I can do that by just double clicking on the object. That brings up the property inspector. And from here you'll notice there are a number of things here on this particular properties palette that we can click or unclick. So we've got share text, don't wrap, lock text. All those are specific properties of a particular object, in this case this field. Up here is a drop-down list, and within this drop-down list you'll see that it's got colors and patterns. Those are more properties. You can create custom properties. So if there's a property that you're trying to save for this particular field that's not built into LiveCode, you need it to do something special. You need it to store another aspect of itself that you're kind of creating through your imagination. You can do that with custom properties. So the geometry, that's not so much a property as it is to layout. Graphic effects, those are the properties of many times of buttons and interface items. Each one of these is a property, and each one of these can be scripted or coded. You can change the property of an object through a script or through a code. That means its size, its position on the screen. Those can all be changed by scripts or coding. So how was this particular example created? It's going to bring up one new concept that we haven't talked about, and that's the idea of a variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one out of the way here, take it off screen, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a new stack, new project. So to do that, I'm going to go back into LiveCode. I'm going to click New Main Stack. I'm going to resize this window a little bit, the first card of this window, just get it how I want. Then I'm going to do my one button and one field onto the card. So I'm going to drag out a button, and then I'm going to drag out a field. I'll make this a scrolling field rather than just a standard field. So it's got a scroll bar on the right side. I'm going to change the properties of this button so it says Show Fields Properties. So I'm going to highlight it and come up to where it says Button and say Show Fields Properties. That changes the text on the button. I'm going to go ahead and add some code to this button so that when the user clicks this button, it's going to turn around and show me all the properties of this particular field, this one field. So to do that, I'm going to click Edit Script, and then I'm going to save this. I'm going to move this up into my screen here so that I can see it. And then we're going to add some code here. So when the mouse comes up, I want to get the properties of card field 1. So how do I do that? Pretty straightforward. Get the properties of card field 1. So what that's going to do is it's going to put all the properties of card field 1 into an array, which is essentially a list. And that list then we're going to take and we're going to parse out all the text of that list, and we're going to combine it and return the text in a format that's easier to read. So we're going to use some additional code here that you'll learn about later, but this is going to be a combine using return and colon. So essentially what this does is it converts the array to a text list. So when we get the properties, it's actually putting it into an array. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that array and convert it into separate items in a list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that into a variable. And a variable is just like when you're studying math, like x plus 2 equals 5. What's the value of x? X is a variable. So in this case, we're going to store the properties that we've created now into a list into a variable before we put it into the field. So we're going to put it, which is actually the result of this top line here where it says combine it using return and colon. So we're going to combine all that, and we're going to take the result, or it, the result sometimes can be known as it, and we're going to place it into a variable. My field property, property list. So you can name a variable anything you want. In this case, I'm just putting a bunch of words together so that it makes sense. My field property list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that content that we're now storing in this variable, and the content is just all the properties of card field 1, and we're going to put my field property list into card field 1. And that should do it. So we're going to get the properties. It's going to return those properties in an array, which is not very useful in terms of reading. It's great when you're trying to manipulate data. You want to have it in an array. But we're going to take that array, we're going to combine it using a return and colon, and essentially make a big list out of it. And then when it's done combining it into a big list, we're going to put it into a variable. And then we're going to take that variable and put it into card field 1. So I'm going to click apply. Good thing we have no errors. Close the script box. I'm going to choose the browse tool. Move these out of the way. Then I'm going to click show field properties. And what we have now is a list of these properties for this particular field.